Hi guys, welcome to this new part of Node Express MongoDB Bootcamp. In this part, we are going to be updating the controller's logic. Currently, we are fetching the data from our local file, which is the nodes, not this nodes.json file. We are adding new data directly in this file using the fs module, and we are going to be working with the database now rather than the local files, right? So first of all, I'm going to keep this function as it is. It's just the middleware that was just for elaboration in one of my last videos. So I'm going to fetch all the data, nodes data, which is stored in the database. So currently our server is running. If I go to the Postman, hit send, and this data is coming from a local nodes.json file, right? And this controller is running currently. So I'm going to update this get request first. So here, there is only one line that I need to call. So I need to call nodes equals to await, because we have this node class now, and node class will be used to get the data, to perform query to the database, to update, delete, or any kind of document manipulation. We'll be using this node class. So node dot find, and that's it. We don't need to do anything else. It will automatically by default go to the database and fetch the data, right? And this is the nodes, and it's giving an error. The reason is that we need to give the async keyword because it's the asynchronous. And let's save now, and let's wait for DB connection to be successful, and then I will go towards Postman and try to trigger this get nodes API, right? So DB connection is successful. Let's go to the Postman, hit send, and now you can see that this is the one document that we created in the last video, and this data is now coming from the database. So these are all the functions provided by Mongoose itself, because we created Mongoose schema, then using that schema we created the Mongoose model, and this is the model that we are using to fetch the data, right? And we need to now add some kind of error handling to it. And when we use async await, you remember that we can use the try catch to add some kind of error handling to it. Okay, so it looks a lot cleaner. We are not using any fs package or local files to it, so it's not else, it should be the catch. Okay, so catch can have some error like this. So I'm just copying this line just for reference. So it's not going to return anything. Let's remove return. And the status is 4000 and message note with this ID. Uh, so I'm just going to update this object. So let's add a status failed, and then the message is error in getting nodes from DB. Okay, and then we can append it with the error, right? And this is how we can do the error handling. And I've just saved this file, and I'll be waiting for DB connection. You know that we are using nodemon, and nodemon automatically reruns the server. So we are done with this get requests, and let's save it. And meanwhile, once the DB connection is successful, I'm going to update the logic of this get node by ID now. Okay, so in order to get node by ID, I need to get the ID, and this is how I'll be getting the ID. I don't need to get the data from the nodes. Instead, I'll be getting a particular node using a function just like this find. Okay, so for getting a particular node, what I need to do is I just need to call await node dot find by ID. You can see that it is giving us a lot of functions. It has automatically figured out that it's the mongoose class, and the mongoose class contains all these functions. So find by ID, I'm going to paste it below the ID that I have found so that I can pass the ID to it. Okay, so I can pass an ID, and now I've got this particular node which is related to this ID coming from this request object, right? And we don't need to call this now. And here again, we can check if the node exists with that particular ID. Then we are actually adding a check if that node with this ID does not exist, and then we can actually pass the success data message, and then we can async. And before actually saving this, we need to go to and click on the send, and you can see that the get all nodes array is working fine. And if I refresh this just to clear you guys that the same kind of data exists in our database in Mongo Atlas. So it's refreshing, it's loading the data, and you can see it's only one data and the same data is visible in our Postman. So let's try to fetch a particular node by ID. So let's save it. And meanwhile, its DB connection is successful. Let's copy this particular ID, and this is the request that I already created. First, I will try to run this particular API with the wrong ID. So DB connection successful. Let's send, and could not get the response. Node 18, and there is an error here. So request.params.id, and then find by ID, passing an ID, and then checking the node. So I'm going to remove this for now, and let's try to add some kind of error handling to it, just so we get the proper error message where we are wrong. Okay, and let's copy, paste, and I'm going to note with this ID does not exist. Okay, so we have added this error check, and we are returning a proper response. Let's save it now again, and I hope that it will work fine now. Let's go. I'm waiting for DB to be connection successful. Yes. Let's send it. And yes, you can see that it's showing the node with this ID does not exist. So this is one node which is currently existing here. And I'm going to paste the correct ID over here. So let's send. And now you can see that the message is successful and the node, and we are updating all the controllers and fetching the proper data from these. And this is how we are getting, and it look a lot cleaner. What do you think? Tell me in the comments below of this video, right? So I'm going to update this particular controller now. And once I'll update it, I will fill up our database with the data which exists in our nodes.json file, because currently we only have one document and it's not convenient for us to test different routes. Okay, so let's add, and again, it's pretty straightforward again. So now I'm going to first log something. So whatever data which is coming from that uh, postman or a client side, it will be received in request.body. Okay, and in order to store some kind of data in our database, we can actually create const new node equals to await note dot, And let's see what we have over here. So we have a function create, we have a create collection, we have create indexes. So let's see what we have inside the create. So inside the create we can give it docs. It can be multiple docs. It can be a single docs as well. So currently our data will be received in our request.body, so we can directly give it a request.body, and that's it. We don't need to create all these stuff, fetch the data, assign it, and create a new node, and then write it inside it. Okay, and that's it. It's automatically going to handle adding a new id, fetching the data, and append the data. Everything is going to be handling over here. So I'm going to add async over here, right? And then we can add a status. I'm just going to copy, paste. Let's remove everything. Let's add try catch. All right, and then I'm just going to cut it from here, and also add this error message over here like this. So JSON, and it is failed, and error in creating a new node. And then I'm going to append it with the error of the catch. And let's try to test this out now, guys. So we already have one data with the HTML. Let's try to add it with this CSS object. Okay. So this is the post notes, and this is already added express, and I'm going to append the data over here, which is the CSS, and it's looking good. I'm not going to add the created at, updated at as of now, and also not the important false, because I have set the default properties to it. Okay, so let's save it and let's verify DB successful. I'll hit send, and it's taking some time. Error in creating new node reference notes is not defined. So have I misspelled? Yeah, so it's actually a data. So node colon new node. So let's say there was a variable which was not existing, and this was an error. So once it gets successful, I'll be adding all this data in my database. So DB connection is about to be successful, and I'm just waiting for it. Yeah, so let's hit send, and creating a new node, duplicate key occur. All right, so uh, actually if I go and refresh, and here you can see that our data have been already generated in our database, but still it is throwing an error. The reason is that it's actually status failed. We are actually duplicating the keys for the title, and we set the title unique over here, right? Earlier when there was an error with this variable, let me show you this variable. We are actually returning the response to our client side, but this particular line, when got triggered, it automatically created a new node in our database without caring about the next line, whether it throwing an error or not, right? There was an error about the variable name and it created this node. So that's fine. We are successfully creating our CSS in our database. Uh, let's try to update it with our JS property now. Okay, so here I'm just going to remove these three properties. Let's try to send, and yeah, there is no unique title error now because we are adding the new title with new description and the priority is new, and this is being added by default, and important is also added by default, right? So we have added JS. Let's try to add this node as well. Copy, paste this. It's sent, node is added, and lastly I'm going to add this express because next objects are also related to the express.js. Okay, so let's save it, and I'm going to remove these three properties, send, and yeah, it's saved. Let's verify over here, refresh. Okay, so we have the five documents in our database, one for the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Node, and Express. Awesome. So we are actually communicating with our real database and we have updated our controllers. We can actually remove now this notes.json file. We don't need it, right? So now we have to update these two functions now. Update node and delete node now. So it's not, you can see it's too much code over here. We don't need to write anything like this once we are connecting with the database. So let's try to get the ID. I'm just going to copy this line, this code from the create node actually, not this, get node by ID. So replace it. So this code is for the get node by ID, but we need to update the node. We have got an ID. We have to get the request.body as well, and we can directly add that in our. So if I write node dot update, we you can see it's showing that update many, update one, update node, find one, and update. Since we have an ID, first we need to find out that which node we want to update. So this function find one and update is the one we can get uh, the node first and then update it, and the second one is the one I'll be using, and it's the function that I like for updating any kind of data. So find by ID. First, I will pass it an ID. You can see it is asking me to pass an ID, which we have already got. And then it's saying that with which object we want to update. We need to give it a new object. So new object is getting in request or body, right? And then I'm just going to give it few properties which I'll be explaining in upcoming videos. These are important for running some validations when we'll be handling some kind of errors. Then we will be using this. Okay, so run validators true. And yeah, that's it. We are updating our node, and let's verify if these messages are success. Node has been updated, and the node with this ID does not exist, and you can add any error message to it. So we have updated our controller for updating our node. So now let's go to the postman and test this particular route if we can update the particular node or not. So I think this is fine, and let's go over here. So currently we will be passing a wrong ID to it. So let's try to see. This ID is restricted because I'm checking over here. This is a middleware. Let's try it with this. So node with this ID does not exist, so our error message is working fine. Let's try to update our one of the node from here. So these are all the nodes coming from the database. Let's try to update this CSS or HTML. I'm getting the ID of the CSS patch and I'm adding the ID, right? And I can pass any of the properties, whether it's description, it can be the title, it can be And while updating, you know that we cannot even make it unique with other documents because we have set it a unique property. So I'm going to add cascading style sheets. I hope that I have spelled it rightly, cascading. And let's send. And yeah, success node has been updated. And this is the new object being coming from the database. Let's try to get it from the get nodes. Let's send. And yeah, this data is coming from the database, and you can see that we have updated this particular node and the description of this node successfully. And this is the result, right? So let's quickly go ahead and try to delete the node. Okay, so for deleting the node, I'm just going to copy everything from the above function, not above, but from this update node. Okay, so now we have this. Let's try to remove it. And we'll be having an ID. We don't need the request.body. So find by ID and delete. And again, what it takes an ID. So give it an ID. That's it. And it's going to delete a node with this particular ID that we will be passing from the client side. So node have been deleted. Node with this ID does not exist. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. We need to test this delete API now if we are successfully deleting this thing. So let me go to the postman. I don't want to delete any existing data. Let me create a new one. So let's go to the post notes and let's try to change the title one. Hit save and success. We have created this new express one data. If I go to the get nodes, send, and it should have express one. I will try to delete this. Okay, so let's try to copy this ID. Let's give it ID, hit send, and yeah, it is deleted now. We have got this node has been deleted, and let's try to get it from the get request, and yeah, it does not have that particular object. So guys, now we are actually communicating with our real database on our cloud Mongo Atlas, right? And for this video, I'm going to add one last thing over here that I want to add a new property to it, and this is called the trim true. If by any reason description have empty spaces at the start or end of string, I want to trim it. And I don't want to add this trim. Let's try to add this trim to title as well, right? So that's it. So that's pretty much it. In the next video, we'll be talking about some more features of Mongoose, like filtering data from the database, sorting, pagination, and furthermore, the middlewares and adding some object-oriented programming in our Express. So let's move further. If you are liking my tutorial series, don't forget to subscribe my channel, hit the like button and comment below if you have any question.